So I joined the probation service in the 1980s, and in the 1990s I went to work in the London area, which was policed by the Met. And I think different police areas have different cultures, and I would say working in London was quite tough, but in some ways I had quite a lot of respect for the different agencies, and we were quite used to working hard in London, the police, social services, and probation, and it was quite fast paced. There was quite a lot of staff changing, but we seemed really kind of used to dealing with high levels of crime, of high levels of risk, and we were quite professional at times. I even met some police officers who got into trouble. And they were quite decent guys, actually. I felt really sorry for one or two because one or two were clearly burnt out by the job, or they had post-traumatic stress through having dealt with murders and things like that. So, and I think some of the public can be very tough to deal with at times, and some of the offenders too. So, life isn't always straightforward or black and white. There's a lot of grey. The bit that I found quite a lot of offenders do come through the care system. So, if we want to reduce crime, it really, I would urge people, and politicians in particular, to look at this area, look at how our youngsters grow up in the United Kingdom, and really pay attention to this, and look at these people who aren't going to school, for example, and look at putting better provision for those who are excluded from school, because nearly all the children who are excluded from school do end up becoming offenders on that. And particularly the bit about, and our care system as well needs looking at, because so many children are not through the care system end up becoming offenders too, and many become victims of abuse somehow, and I think that's really sad. And John talks quite openly about some bad practice that goes on, and he talked about how the police would go in heavy at times with difficult offenders or people who try, if a policeman got hurt, they would really steam in and hurt that offender. And I remember on occasion offenders coming in to see me that I was supervising, and they'd been battered by the police, and they used to say, oh no, and they would end up being charged, having been battered by the police, they would be charged with assault police, and they say, I didn't do it, they attacked me. But and it's difficult when you're a probation officer, because you've got to support law and order, haven't you? And you don't really you don't always believe what offenders tell you, do you? But so what I used to try and say was, look, you need to avoid confrontational situations with people and the police. And it may be that a policeman might push you and push you and push you, but you've got to learn to react appropriately and be really polite, and don't bite, and don't be abusive to police officers. Just be polite and above board, and that's the way to deal with things. Don't ever allow yourself to be provoked in any sort of situation. But yeah, it wasn't uncommon for guys to come in battered by the police, and they'd be assaulted, and there'd be a trial in the magistrates' court. Say, what a waste of time, isn't it, for the police to have to attend magistrates' court? But the thing was, about, I would say, 9 times out of 10, the magistrate court would always agree with the police anyway, if there was between an offender and, the police statements and so on. And they used to write their statements out like in a classroom sort of thing, so. And there was a guy, I think one of the problems that we used to have in London, and I had it, and I'm going to talk about this, was we used to end up with people with mental health problems getting caught up in the criminal justice system. And really, they need to be, or they needed to be, diverted out of the criminal justice system. And a lot of time would be caught up for the police and for probation with these people. And they would appear in court, and often the magistrates just didn't know what to do with these people, and they would make them subject to probation orders. And I had some who were completely, genuinely mentally ill, but the mental health services and the psychiatrists would say, oh, this person has got untreatable personality disorder, we can't work with this person, it's up to probation. And they were clearly mentally ill. And this was really frustrating, not only for me, but the police. So I remember there was this one young man who was accused of GBH. He was on trial, due to attend trial, and he had personality disorder, mental health problems, and he was subject to probation to me, and he would come in, but he always came in on the wrong day. I'd give him a morning appointment on a Monday, and he used to come in on a Friday afternoon when we were shutting, and he always seemed to be coming just before we shut, and he'd be blah, 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 and when we were trying to shut the office, and he was really intense and in my face, telling me all his problems, and blah, 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 blah. And one of them was he always forgot to attend his court appearances. So each time he failed to attend a court appearance, some police would be sent round to his flat to go and arrest him for failing to attend court. So the first time they knock the door and he gets really angry and shouty with them and quite confrontational. So the next time he does it, they go, like 8 of them all go, and they kick his door in early in the morning, and he gets even more angry and he picks up a knife and he's fighting with them in the kitchen and all of that. So the next time they went, they took 3 van loads of police, all dressed in riot gear and all that. Anyway, this guy comes in on a Friday afternoon, and my colleagues started shutting the office, and I got left on my own with this guy. And he said, oh no, I forgot to attend court again. And I said, well, he said, what can I do about it? I don't want there's 3 van loads of police coming around. I said, okay, I'll phone the police up. So I phoned them up and I said, look, I've got so-and-so, he's a warrant out for his arrest. He can come in and hand himself in now, or would you like me to bring him in? So save you sending 3 van loads of police round. So just to, people imagine that probation officers deal with, little pussycats or something, but no, we're dealing with the same dangerous people. And indeed, I had to go and visit this guy on my own. I had to do a home visit to his flat on my own. We didn't have the resources for 2 of us to go around. And, I think the police were shocked when we started to do risk panel meetings that some of my colleagues, even female colleagues, were going around to do home visits on sex offenders on the like on their own. And the police would always send 2 people, somebody like that. But, and I think sometimes the police would be, and the public, a bit disrespectful towards probation and, don't realise, the difficult job, and that actually we also put our lives on the line. And even I have been assaulted on a couple of occasions. I was assaulted in probation office, and a guy assaulted me and he punched me and things like that, and nothing happened. The guy wasn't arrested or anything like that. But had he done that to a police officer, he would have got hammered, actually, wouldn't he? In those days, in the 1990s. Something else that John talks about is drugs. A lot of crime is to do with drugs, and the police are not always squeaky clean regards drugs and drug dealing and the like. And I remember a few offenders coming in and they tell me that they've been arrested for drug dealing. The police have done a raid. They've been in and they've gone up to their loft, and underneath the quilt they found all this money. When that appears at court, only half the money that was there they state as being found. So instead of £10,000 that was in notes, cash in the loft, they said, oh, there was £5,000. So in other words, £5,000 went missing. Sometimes the money was hidden in the freezer, and the guy say, oh, I had, £16,000, and the police only said that only 8,000 was in there. So that kind of thing happened as well. And I was speechless. I couldn't say, oh, really, and I had this one guy who, he was quite a little bit scary actually. He was a Turkish guy, very big bloke, quite a little bit scary, I think. And he said that he got released on parole and that he got set up by a drug dealing gang and a police officer. And, I've got to be careful here because I don't want to really disclose his identity. But he said some former criminal associates asked to meet him somewhere or other. And I said, well, you shouldn't have met him. You shouldn't have met this guy. But they said, look, we've got this thing. We want you just to look after this suitcase for us or whatever. So anyway, he went to meet them at this place and they gave him this suitcase. But there was a lot more in the suitcase than what they said. And not only that, there was so a lot more drugs, there was cash, scales, all those kind of things, and a lot more than what they said. And immediately they gave it to him. Within seconds, this policeman arrived and arrested him. And this policeman was a bit of a super cop. He seemed very good at arresting people, in the drugs world. But of course, he was working allegedly, according to this Turkish guy, he was working allegedly with this drug family and taking out the opposition, wasn't he? And he appeared to be super cop getting all these arrests, but he was in cahoots with this drug gang, wasn't he? So this Turkish guy kept saying to me, oh no, I got recalled back to prison because of them. And he wasn't happy. And he said, I want to get revenge, I want to tell the police, but I daren't because they got this guy who fitted me up. I'm sure it was him. So I said, well, I don't know what you can do, or whatever. Anyway, he came in later. He came on day release. He was coming towards the end of his sentence. And he said, I've done it. I've found a way. I've gone and spoken to Customs and Excise, and they've spoken with I can't remember their name, the Regional Crime Squad, somebody high up. And so they took the local police out of the loop and they went high up. And he said, they're going to nick him at some point. And he said, wouldn't it be funny if you ended up with a case? The guy, one of them lives at this address. Is that your patch? So I had a map on the wall and he said, this street here. And I went, oh, right. And they also own a petrol station and the VAT people have gone in there and raided this garage and a travel agency that they've been laundering money through. And they've gone and said, look, they've done it for VAT evasion at the garage and the travel agency. And I said, oh, all right. And I forgot all about it. Anyway, this guy, he finished his licence and he thanked me very much, actually, sincerely, for all my support. And he invited me for lunch. I said, no, I can't do that kind of thing, but only when you finish your sentence. So actually I did have a lunch. He was no longer a client, just a goodwill thing. So I want to thank you. He said, I'm disappearing now into the countryside somewhere in Great Britain. I'm relocating and nobody will be able to find me. I said, oh, well, good luck and stay out of trouble. And I've been on at him about strategies for staying out of trouble and keeping squeaky clean and having nothing to do with people like that anymore. And he really wanted to do it. Anyway, I think he was relocated because he ended up giving very, very interesting information. Anyway, a couple of years later, I got asked to go and do this report at Pentonville Prison. And I go up there and I was looking at the paper and I misread the amount. I thought it was a small amount, but the file was beautifully done, much better than a normal Met Police file. But it was done by the VAT people and the Regional Crime Squad, and it was beautiful. And they've been tanning these people around, and they found masses of drugs. I put the decimal point in the wrong place. I thought it was less drugs. They found masses of drugs in this guy's car that have been parked up in a garage. And not only that, later they also done a raid on the house and found masses, huge amount of drugs. And anyway, this guy was very glib, he wouldn't give any information. I said, well, tell me about your employment history. He said, oh, I used to work in the family garage and the travel agency and that, but the VAT people came and shut us down. And I said, oh, where is it you live? And it was that street. It was him. So anyway, so that kind of backs up. Do have a look at John Wedge's interview with Dodge Woodall. He's given interviews with lots of different people on YouTube, but I think Dodge's interview is the best one. It really thorough. It goes on for quite a while, but it's really, really interesting. And it's not me saying it, it's a police officer talking about corruption. And, you know, I think, you know, I've always been cautious to slag off the police because there are a lot of really good police officers and it's a tough job and I've got a lot of respect for them, but there are some dodgy ones, unfortunately, and it tarnishes the name of everybody, doesn't it, of the whole police, to the point that people don't really have confidence in them, you know, and it's sad. It's sad. And I think what's happening in all the public services is you've got a really high staff turnover now of police. And a lot of the experienced police officers are going, same in probation, prison officers, very high staff turnover, teaching profession, high staff turnover. And somehow or other, we need to stop this and value people more, you know, and have high standards, really. So, and the whole point is we need to, going back to, and I think we really need to focus long term and look at our young people and building positive futures for them and not writing off people too young, you know, and that's the way forwards, I would say, and the most cost effective way, because, you know, sending people away to prison is really expensive and very, very, people come out quite violent out of prison very often, and they don't come out rehabilitated, and there's lack of resources for helping people deal with drug problems, helping people get jobs, and helping people reintegrate back into society and overcoming their drug addictions and so on. So, and the accommodation is a big problem, isn't it? So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, and like I say, do have a look at Dodge's interview with John Wedger, and I put the link to it in my contents bit below. All right. So thank you very much for those that have stuck it out to the end of this video. I really appreciate it, and all the very best to you. Thanks now. Bye bye.